Imagine going on a hiking trip with your closest friends. You've trained for months, packed carefully, planned every detail. You're experienced, confident, prepared for the harsh winter conditions ahead. The journey is supposed to be challenging, but not deadly. Now imagine that weeks later, rescue teams find your campsite. Your tent is still standing, your supplies are still inside. But something is terribly wrong. The tent has been cut open from the inside. Bare footprints lead away into the freezing darkness. The hikers are nowhere to be seen. And when their bodies are finally discovered, the mystery only grows deeper. Some are found miles from camp. Some appear to have died from exposure. Others have severe injuries. No witnesses, no survivors, no clear answers. More than 60 years later, people are still debating what happened. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident, one of history's most enduring real-life mysteries. The story begins in January 1959. The Soviet Union was in the middle of the Cold War. Adventure and exploration were highly respected. Across the country, experienced hikers regularly organized difficult expeditions into remote wilderness areas. One such expedition was led by a young engineering student named Igor Dyatlov. Dyatlov was 23 years old, smart, organized, and highly experienced in winter hiking. He assembled a team of fellow students and outdoor enthusiasts. Most were in their 20s. Several had completed demanding expeditions before. These were not beginners. They understood survival. They understood mountains. And they understood the dangers of winter travel. The group's goal was ambitious. They planned to cross a remote section of the northern Ural Mountains. The route was considered one of the highest difficulty categories available in the Soviet hiking system. Completing it would be a major achievement. On January 23rd, the group began their journey. There were originally 10 members. They traveled by train, then by truck, eventually reaching the edge of civilization. From there, they would continue on skis into the wilderness. The conditions were harsh. Deep snow covered the landscape. Temperatures regularly dropped far below freezing. Powerful winds swept across the mountains, but morale remained high. Photographs recovered later showed the group smiling, laughing, playing in the snow. They appeared confident and optimistic. Everything seemed normal. Then one member turned back. A hiker named Yuri Yudin developed health problems. Knowing he could not continue safely, he left the expedition and returned home. At the time, it was disappointing. But that decision would save his life. The remaining 9 hikers continued deeper into the mountains. It would be the last time anyone saw them alive. As the expedition progressed, weather conditions worsened. Strong winds reduced visibility. Snowstorms made navigation increasingly difficult. On February 1st, the group reached the slopes of a mountain known today as Kholat Syakhl. The name is often translated as Dead Mountain. Despite the ominous name, there was nothing particularly unusual about their decision to camp there. They were likely delayed by poor visibility and difficult terrain. Rather than descend into a forested area for shelter, they pitched their tent on an exposed mountainside. It was a challenging location, but experienced hikers often made difficult decisions like this. That night, something happened. Exactly what happened remains the mystery. The group never arrived at their destination. Days passed. Then weeks. Eventually, concern grew among friends and family. Search teams were organized. Rescuers began combing the frozen wilderness. What they found raised more questions than answers. The first major discovery was the tent. It was partially buried beneath snow. At first glance, it appeared abandoned, but investigators quickly noticed something strange. The tent had been cut open, not from the outside, from the inside. Several slashes had been made through the fabric, as if the occupants were desperate to get out immediately. Even stranger, many of their belongings remained behind. Boots, heavy winter clothing, food, supplies, items experienced hikers would never willingly abandon in freezing temperatures. Yet for some reason, they had left. Investigators then followed tracks leading away from the campsite. The footprints were bizarre. Some appeared barefoot. Others seemed to be wearing only socks. A few showed signs of a single shoe. The tracks led downhill toward a nearby forest. The temperature that night may have dropped below -30 degrees Celsius. Exposure under those conditions can kill quickly. Why would anyone leave the safety of a tent dressed like that? Nobody knew. As the search continued, the first bodies were discovered beneath a large cedar tree. 2 hikers were found near the remains of a small fire. They were inadequately dressed for the weather. It appeared they had desperately tried to stay warm. Nearby, investigators noticed broken branches high in the tree. It looked as though someone had climbed it, possibly to look back toward the campsite, possibly searching for something in the darkness. A few hundred meters away, more bodies were found. These hikers appeared to have been attempting to return to the tent, but they never made it. The snow claimed them first. By this point, investigators suspected exposure had played a major role. But the mystery was far from over. Months later, after the snow began melting, the remaining 4 hikers were discovered in a ravine, and these victims showed something unexpected. Several had suffered severe traumatic injuries, broken ribs, major chest trauma, a fractured skull. The injuries appeared serious, yet investigators reportedly found little external damage compared to the severity of the internal injuries. The findings fueled endless speculation. Had they been attacked? Caught in some kind of natural disaster? Struck by falling ice? Nobody could say with certainty. As details emerged, rumors spread rapidly. People began proposing theories. Lots of theories. Some believed the hikers encountered military testing. Others suggested secret weapons. Some proposed attacks by unknown individuals. Others pointed to bizarre explanations involving strange lights reportedly seen in the sky around that time. The mystery seemed to grow with every new detail. For decades, speculation continued. Books were written. Documentaries were produced. Internet forums filled with debates. Everyone seemed to have a different explanation, but many theories struggled to explain all of the evidence. Over time, researchers began focusing more heavily on natural causes. One leading explanation involves an avalanche or a smaller slab avalanche. According to this theory, shifting snow may have created a sudden threat to the campsite. The hikers could have cut their way out of the tent and evacuated quickly, concerned that additional snow might collapse onto them. They may have moved downhill toward the forest for safety. Once there, worsening weather, darkness, and freezing temperatures could have prevented them from returning. Recent computer simulations and scientific studies have suggested that certain snow conditions might have produced injuries similar to those observed. Other researchers point to powerful winds and extreme weather. Some argue that a combination of environmental factors created a perfect disaster. The challenge is that no single explanation answers every question perfectly. The evidence is incomplete. The event occurred in an isolated wilderness area, and crucial details may never be known. Eventually, Official investigations in modern times concluded that a natural force was the most likely cause. Yet debate continues, not because the event lacks explanations, but because it lacks certainty. The people involved were real. The tragedy was real. And the unanswered questions remain real as well. Perhaps that's why the Dyatlov Pass incident continues to fascinate people. Most mysteries eventually receive clear solutions. This one never fully did. Every piece of evidence tells part of the story, but not the entire story. And when gaps exist, people naturally try to fill them. More than 6 decades later, the mountains remain. The snow still falls. The campsite is long gone. But the mystery endures. 9 experienced hikers entered the Ural Mountains. Only one member returned, not because he survived the disaster, but because he turned back before it happened. The rest vanished into one of history's most debated wilderness tragedies. A reminder that nature can be unpredictable, evidence can be incomplete, and sometimes, even after decades of investigation, some questions remain unanswered.